Welcome to North Pole Hoops National Player Rankings. With you is National Scout Tariq Sbiet, joined to my left, Elias Sbiet, the Director of Basketball Recruiting. We've been traveling across Canada looking for the top talent in the country for the last 10 years. Coast to coast, Andrew Wiggins, Nick Stauskas, Anthony Bennett, Jamal Murray, tracking them from high school all the way to the pros. And what we want to do today is break down for you the strongest class ever in Canadian basketball. We're talking about the class of 2018 being the strongest class ever. Elias, talk to me.
That is a bold statement and a very fair one, I would say. When we look, the only one that's comparable is the class of 2013. Andrew Wiggins, Tyler Ennis, Chris Boucher, Xavier Wraithen-Mays, all guys that are in the league right now. And you got Mikhail McIntosh, who's going back for a post-grad year, and he's likely heading in that direction as well. So it's a very fair statement to make.
Now, you talk about that class of 2013. As we look into the history books, you looked at Andrew Wiggins, Tyler Ennis. Those two guys were drafted. And of course, Xavier Wraithen-Mays signing with the New York Knicks, a training camp deal. And then Golden State Warriors signed Chris Boucher on a two-way deal. But as we're looking at the class of 2018, we are projecting a minimum of 4 draft caliber guys and possibly more, depending on how guys develop. Let's start right at the top. What makes this class so strong, in part, is due to the fact that RJ Barrett and Andrew Nembhard, both NBA prospects, reclassing from 2019 to 2018.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge game changer, and it really bolsters up the 2018 class as a whole. RJ making the splash takes his rightful throne at number 1, and I think regardless of class, he would have been there anyways. Maybe even number 1 in North America, let alone the Canadian rankings. RJ's a special talent no matter which way you slice it. The fact that his shooting ability has improved so much over this past couple of months, got to watch him a lot in EYBL where he played 2 sessions, was the leading scorer in the most competitive league in the world at the amateur level. His versatility as a 2, and I'm starting to see him play a little bit of a 1, and we talked about this offset a little bit. That at 6'7", a guy that's playing 2 and 1, that's a deadly combination.
Now let's go down the rankings a little bit more. Talk about different guys, such as at number 2, we got Simi Shittu, no slouch, an NBA prospect in his own right. And as we go further down, I mentioned Andrew Nembhard, Luguentz Dort, Ignas Bradzeikis. You got Jaelin Lliewellyn. You got a lot of guys with pro potential. Talk to me a little bit about those guys.
Well, at 2, let's kick it right there at 2. Simi Shittu, there's nobody that has those type of physicals. At 6'10", length, athleticism, strength, alpha dog mentality. He brings a versatile skill set. He can relieve pressure, bring up the ball, play a little bit of point forward, and he's still developing in that regard. But his upside is absolutely through the roof. And there's Vanderbilt and there's North Carolina on his list, both of which he has been building great relationships with. I think it's, if I were to predict, I think it's steering more towards Vanderbilt with Coach Drew. But that's Simi's going to be a very interesting prospect to watch in college.
And quickly, as we go down the list, talk about Andrew Nembhard, Luguentz Dort, Ignas Bradzeikis, Jaelin Lliewellyn. These are some of the guys that headline this class.
Andrew Nembhard, regardless of class, best point guard in my opinion, and he's followed right after that by Jaelin Lliewellyn. Luguentz, I won't call him a full-time PG yet. I look at him as a combo guard, and I've heard you a couple of times make the comparison to Dwayne Wade with a grain of salt. Now, the type of flash that he has, the explosiveness off the first step, the way that he gets up in the air and absorbs contact, dunks on guys. This is the most pivotal part of Luguentz's game. He's added the 3-ball. He's one of those guys who has literally defined his weaknesses and attacked them each year. So there's been a steady progress in Luguentz's game. Andrew, we're seeing him come back, off of, he had a little bit of a stomach injury. He's back to full health now, and what Florida's about to see and the rest of the U.S. is about to see is something special from that PG. Then you got Ignas Bradzeikis, just committed to Michigan. First one to commit there since Nick Stauskas. Different player from Nick Stauskas, though. He's not going to be the guy who's running routes and going to the corner to shoot the 3. He is a guy who can get in the lane, take contact, create offense for himself and others. Again, at 6'7", 6'8".
Elias, I want to talk about the middle of the pack for the top 10 in the class of 2018. We got a trio of Ivy League commitments, some big-time players going right into the Ivy League, which, by the way, Harvard has been dominating in Canada with recruitment.
Now, don't sleep on Princeton. They just picked up Jaelin Lliewellyn. They have Jerome DeRosier for this year.
Coming strong.
Absolutely. You got Jaelin Lliewellyn, Princeton, Noah Kirkwood to Harvard, and Eze Dike to Yale. That is the Ivy League trio. Now, this is something beautiful about Canadian basketball, and this is a reason why NCAA coaches are now making their way in more into Canada. Recruitment becomes easier when your academics are already in place. And I would say, compared to Americans, the majority of Canadians have their academics in place, have a small group of people that are supporting them, a strong support system.
Welcome back, 2019 North Pole Hoops National Player Rankings. We're going to start at the top. The #1 player in the country, 6'7" guard, AJ Lawson. Elias, who is AJ Lawson and why is he #1?
AJ is just a proven prospect across the board. He went to NBA Basketball Without Borders, played very well there. I heard from a lot of NBA people, scouts and talent evaluators on what he brings to the table as a 6'7" guard. Potentially could end up being a combo long term. Can score from 5 feet outside of the three-point line. His burst is the biggest thing that has been added to his game. That first step, the initial move is what's beating his guy off the dribble. So I mean, factor in all of his size attributes, we're looking at a very high level, college level player and
an NBA prospect.
Yeah, safe to say.
#2, we got Tyrese Samuel. No spot is safe in this class. You know, we talked about 2018. RJ Barrett is solidified in that, a world champion. He's built a resume, but these guys, obviously younger, are still building their resumes. Tyrese Samuel, we say 1A, 1B with AJ and Tyrese. Obviously played different positions, but tell me a little bit about Tyrese.
And Tyrese's versatility is through the roof. What we've seen from him this summer, he had one spectacular performance at the CNIT this year in front of multiple college coaches, where he just dominated the team that he actually played with all summer long. He played with UPlay during the EYBL circuit for a little more exposure, then went back to his family team from Quebec, Red Rush, and actually ended up beating UPlay in the championship game, going Tracy McGrady mode, by the way, with 15 points in like 2 or 3 minutes.
Definitely is a breakout party. 1 and 2, AJ, Tyrese. We'll kind of continue to track them, see how they develop, see how they grow. Now I want to get into a world champion pedigree. You know, Emmanuel Miller, he's another guy that could ultimately climb to #1. He's got that type of upside, playing at La Lumiere right now. You're talking about a 6'6" wingman. He's still finding himself a little bit, but the only world champion in this class played alongside RJ Barrett, Abu Kegab, and all those guys. RJ and Emmanuel will be the youngest on that world championship team. With regards to Miller, what type of upside do you think he has? And ultimately, what type of player will he be? I
think he's just starting to scratch the surface. He made the move to La Lumiere this year in Indiana, where we've seen multiple successful Canadians. Munis Tutu had a terrific career there. Nolan Narain as well, who's at San Diego State and is expected to have a big year as well. Emmanuel, with his length and his strength and athleticism, he's just starting to add to his skill set. You're starting to see the 3-ball really become fluid for him. You're starting to see it become more of a natural release. So with him, I mean, he already holds an offer from Oklahoma, and it's just starting to crank up for him. So on the American national radar, they're really going to get familiar with him this year. And I think the same goes for Quincy Guerrier. If we're going to mention Emmanuel Miller, I think Quincy Guerrier and him are, neck and neck. What makes Quincy special is the fact that he is a lights-out shooter.
Miller, I wanted to add a note there. Love his defensive capabilities and his versatility because of his length and athleticism. Reminds me of a young, just his body type, maybe not as tall, but a young Andrew Wiggins. Of kind of how he carries himself, his long limbs, his athleticism. Of course, not as athletic as Andrew, but nonetheless, just kind of reminds me of him, his body language and whatnot. Last talking point here we wanted to discuss, a riser. We watched him all summer, and now going into the season, Jacoby Neath. Why has he risen so high, and how did he come up on the radar to become a top 10 guy?
Jacoby Neath jumped about 25 spots at the end of the summer, and he's a guy who's really been taking care of his body. You could see he's shredded, he's physically ready. He could potentially play at the next level right now, and his skill level as a point guard, the ability to separate from the defender and create space through step backs, pull backs, a variety of moves in his arsenal, and counter moves when his defenders start to force him one way. He's a guy who's going to lead Crestwood this year in the National Preparatory Association and going to be a major factor. Again, another guy who college coaches are just starting to get familiar with, but somebody who's got such a bright future at the college level.
2019, a lot left to learn. Guys are still growing physically, mentally, skillfully. Jacoby Neath, 6'2", 6'3", point guard. No, he's no doubt a point guard. He can run the show. Already has offers from Tulane and a couple other. You've got 4 or 5 offers right now, and we know his recruitment is about to blow up. Stay tuned and keep tracking the class of 2019 because we definitely will be. Welcome back to the show. Today, the underclassmen take center stage in the Canadian class of 2020 and 2021. Let's take a quick recap and discuss the headliners in 2018, RJ Barrett and Simi Shittu. And as we go to 2019, headlining that class is AJ Lawson and Tyrese Samuel. Now, as we look at 2020, we have a situation where it's actually a non-Canadian competing in Canada. Similarly to Thon Maker, his younger cousin Makur Maker has taken the top spot in the class of 2020. Elias, why has he taken that spot? And he's a kid that is very similar to Thon Maker, his older cousin, where he came from the States, originally from Australia, and now he's just competing within this landscape.
Yeah, I mean, we look at this class, and originally it was Addison Patterson and Cashius McNeilly who were arguably the top 2 spots. Now with Makur in the mix, I think it's pretty undisputed based off of the size and the long-term potential at the NBA level with a kid like this. At 6'11", the versatility on the perimeter and the fact that he's not developing to play college ball. He's developing to play pro ball. And Makur is actually ahead of where Thon was at this age. That's what makes him special, and I think makes him an undeniable #1 spot in 2020.
And you walk into the gym, there's no disputing what he is as far as a physical specimen. And not many guys in the world with that, like as you mentioned, that length, that size, and that athleticism with a developing skill set. The second and third spots belong to the aforementioned Addison Patterson and Cashius McNeilly. Very interchangeable. Still more to prove, as much as these kids do in the class of 2020. Addison Patterson, a kid that's been among the upper echelon and has had the top spot, I mean, since he was 7th, 8th grade as far as his physical advancements. And now we're seeing the rest of the class starting to grow physically and catch up physically. But what separates Addison Patterson from the rest of the class?
Well, I think the size for position. He now stands at 6'7" and is a scoring guard. He could be played as a 2 or a 3. He's very versatile in his scoring ability. He could start from the perimeter, usually operates from the 45 angles when he starts his penetration. And I think that is what allows him to see the floor extremely well. Once he gets 2 defenders to collapse on him, he has the vision and is unselfish enough to make the right reads, make the right pass. Now, I think I've seen him listed in some places as a point guard. I don't think that his long-term position is as a point guard because his knack for scoring is so good. You wanna embrace your natural abilities. But that I think is what separates him. He's an elite level scorer, and now that his athleticism is really starting to take mold, we're looking at a pretty scary threat on the floor. Now add the defensive side to his game. If he can combine a full game or multiple full games playing offense and defense at the same level, that is a true force to be reckoned with.
Now, it's really interesting watching him in the preseason a little bit. For the first time, he's not the top dog on his team. He looks to his right, he sees Luguentz Dort, physical specimen, mental toughness, and I think it's going to be an interesting dynamic as he continues to develop, and that can only make him better. We look at Cashius, you know, a 6'5" combo guard. Play him at the 1, you play him at the 2. You know, he's a guy that has been playing in a little different situation than Addison. He's been playing up for a while. I remember watching him as a 9th grader playing up on the AAU circuit with 12th graders, seniors. Makur Maker, Justin Jackson on that Canada Elite team.
Yeah, no, and Cashius has had the national team experience. Again, like you said, he's played with Nickeil Alexander-Walker, you know, right before he graduated, and I had his last AAU season, and he never looks out of place. That's the beauty of his game. His IQ, his mentality is at a much higher level than a lot of the other players in the 2020 class, and the game comes to him easily. He has feel. He has a good understanding of where everybody is on the floor. His peripherals are in check. I think Cashius is in a position right now where he is the top point guard, but there are guys coming after him.
No question.
And, you know, one name that I want to bring up who's actually in this top 5 is Okai Jamgos from Oakville, Ontario. He's somebody who's completely under the radar. I don't even think the national team, you know, he didn't even get an invite to the national team camp. But he's somebody that's got to be on that radar. Also stands at 6'4", elite shooter. Now, when we can't just throw the word elite around. I'm talking about a guy that makes, you know, 15, 16 out of 20. Okai Jamgos is the type of player who's already a threat from the perimeter using his three-point shot. But now you add the fact that he is a big-time ball handler as well, and he's about to lead LBA with, you know, Jalen Warren graduated and moved on. He's in position now as a point guard to have a true effect on this team right from the jump.
Now, I know you're very high on Okai. Heard great reviews. I've seen it myself. No question, highly skilled. But a lot of these guys have a lot to prove. You know, if you look at the junior national team, potential team, I should say, for next summer, you're looking at these guys that would be considered playing up with the 2019 class. You look at Addison and Cashius having a good chance to play for this team. And Okai, if he does if he is who you and we think he is, he's gonna make a statement pretty quickly. And then another guy that's right there, Joshua Hemmings, 6'8", 6'9", at Oak Hill. He's a kid. We've talked about upside for years with him, and it seems that he's grown a little bit. But what I want to know about is where's his skill set at, and what do you see him as long term in terms of position? Josh
Hemmings is stands at 6'8", and we got to see him a lot during the AAU circuit this past summer. He is a player that is ultimately going to play the 3 position. I think he brings a great deal of he's like a Swiss Army knife. Let's call him that. He could shoot from the 3-point line. He could put it on the deck and create. He can absorb contact on the attack as well. At Oak Hill, he's going to be tested, and that is a very good test for him, considering that, you know, Oak Hill is a dominant American program that plays a great national schedule. You know, he's going to be around players that are being recruited at the high major level, and so is he now. He's got a couple offers from Cincinnati and elsewhere. He's a guy who will be, he could essentially move up to number 1. I would not be surprised, you know, based off of how his year goes.
I'm not ready to go there, only because he hasn't had an opportunity to yet lead a team at a high level. He was a younger guy at Oak Hill last year, and I'm assuming he's gonna get more minutes this year. So I think that mental piece, the confidence piece, is a huge part of the development. But nonetheless, we'll keep tabs on that.
I just feel like when you put all of these guys in the same gym, that is what's going to give the true indication of who's who. The cream always rises to the top.
And let's transition to the class of 2021. Now, you know, these underclassmen, you know, age groups, it's you never know what it's going to look like 6 months, 3 months down the road, let alone 6 months down the road, and then a year down the road, as far as physical, mental development, as they continue to develop their skills, extremely important. Does not matter where you're ranked. You know, at this point, it's just about continue to get better. And that's the case not just as underclassmen, that's period. No matter where you're ranked, you need to get better and better, and the rankings will take care of themselves. Muon Reath.
Muon
Reath. Out of Ottawa, Ontario. The nation's capital. I've said this publicly, Elias. It's been slept on for years. And Muon Reath, like that Mariel Shayok prior to him, Eddie Ekiyor, You know, guys that there's been names that I could go on forever about names out of Ottawa. Muon Reath, to me, is the #1 player in this country right now, based on upside and based on I'm very confident in their development model over there. Playing at Canada Top Flight Academy, another big name coming in the NPA, 6'7", and has grown. It's looking like he could get to potentially get to 6'9". He fits that Kevin Durant mold as far as his agility, his length, and his developing skill set.
Well, it's nice to agree on some things once in a while with you. I do feel like that.
When I'm right, of course,
that Kevin Durant mold is suitable for him. And he just had a 3-inch growth spurt over the summer. He now stands at 6'7". He can handle the ball. He's proven and tested against his own age group and kind of got a feel for things in the NPA last year. But this year, as a national champion, people are coming after you guys. I'm speaking on Canada Top Flights as a whole. Now, Muon is one of those guys who's going to help carry the torch. He's going to be looked at as an offensive threat at all times.
And defensive.
Oh, absolutely. He takes away a lot of angles with that length. When he opens up and he sinks his base and gets
very nimble as well off his feet.
Absolutely. So, I mean, with a guy like him, matched with Lliewellyn on his side, Kaleem Sayers and other guys like that, Muon Reath is going to make some serious noise this year.
The upside in this class, Elias, is interesting because you have several guys at the top that fit the same profile. 6'6", 6'7", 6'8", still growing with a lot of length, bouncy, agile, nimble off the floor. And guys like Cordell Charles out of Toronto and George Lefebvre out of Montreal fit that mold, similar to Muon Reath.
Yeah, and with Cordell Charles, we're seeing him break out of his timid shell, and we're starting to see him learn about who he is as a player. Super high character kid. Like, he's the nicest kid to talk to. On the floor, now I want to see him just, unleash a little bit, and I think it's starting to come. He's starting to fill up his lanes. He's starting to, to get out in transition, to really push with some pace. I'm excited about what Cordell is going to look like after this year because he plays on a very young team with Bill Crothers where he now has an opportunity to be the man on the squad. So Cordell, I think by the end of the season, we're looking at guys like him, guys like Georges Lefebvre. Georges stands at 6'8". I think he's, from the bigs, he's a little bit ahead because he's always had the mechanics. With some 6'8" guys, you look at them, and 6'8" at this age, I mean, you look at them and they look like baby giraffes that just came out of the womb and they're kind of just learning how to move.
George's got that fluidity to him.
Absolutely. The mobility's always been there. The ball hand-eye coordination has always been there. So these two are both very interesting prospects. And Lefebvre is going to be in North Carolina this year being tested in one of the biggest hotbeds in America. So looking forward to seeing how he progresses.
Lefebvre, I look at him as developing as that combo forward. Will be multi-dimensional and play multiple positions, but that combo forward ultimately is where I see him. And let's just look at a different position here. We're looking at a 6'3" point guard in Kayvon Marshall, a guy that Antwi Atueni, one of our colleagues, former Arizona State alum, referred to as young James Harden. A 6'3" point guard in Marshall, but also that statement coming from a 6'3" point guard that played with Harden.
Twee's a wise man. He sees into the future. Having played with Harden, I mean, he's got the most credibility to speak on that. The fact that he would mention something like that is very interesting, and I do see what he's talking about. Kayvon Marshall is a guy who steps on the floor in almost every game, nears a triple-double. He rebounds. He's not only aggressive going at rebounds, but he has a knack for it. He knows where to be on the floor in order to secure a possession and then bust out the other way. He can score from the three-point line. He can finish in transition above the rim, and he's super unselfish.
He's a guy that, as he's grown over the last year, he went from a just straight scorer and now has become more of a playmaker, looking for teammates because he's always gonna draw attention every time he hits the floor.
And you know what? I want to credit someone for a part of his development, and I know Kayvon would as well. Coach Dash has been coaching at Grassroots and been with this age group for a very long time. He's helped him add something to his game progressively on a year-by-year basis. And I think that, looking at this class here, it's the guys that constantly add something to the game that, usually elevate. In the previous class, we just talked about Okai Jambos, went from being a spot-up shooter that, ran the Nick Stauskas route from Michigan to now being a ball handler that's being a PG. You're seeing the same thing with Kevon Marshall.
We're going to look at another point guard here at the 5th spot in Kyle Duke. We watched him last year with St. Mike's. He's got a bag of tricks, able to really do a lot on the floor as far as playmaking goes. Sees the plays, he's a step ahead of plays usually, and can really create for himself and others. With regards to Kyle Duke, tell me a little bit about how do they differ and how are they alike with regards to point guards? Because we're looking at Kevon Marshall as a point guard, Kyle Duke as a point guard. The rest of those guys, they can fluctuate from 1 to 5.
Yeah, and I think for the rest of those guys, it really depends on how they label their strengths and whether they choose to continue expanding on their game or master certain attributes of the game. Now with Kyle Duke, he's different from Kevon Marshall in the fact that he's a score-first point guard, I find. Marshall is just a basketball player. He's a bona fide baller. Duke, very good at creating space, very good at breakdown, very good at getting to the rim, but he's going to be challenged when he's around playing against older, bigger, longer, stronger competition. So we're seeing him transition and make turning into I saw him be a point guard, and then I saw him transition to more of a shooting guard. I'm going to call Kyle a combo at this point. Uses the Euro step effectively, can get to the rim, can separate, can really do a good job separating space between him and the defender.
You don't look at him as just a full-time point guard?
No, not yet. There's certain attributes of his game. Although he's an on-target passer, I think the point guard, because the position has evolved, I'm looking at him as more of a combo because the score-first mentality.
He's a straight point guard. We watched him run the show at St. Mike's against older competition for a whole season.
Right, and there was a lot of deficiencies I found.
I mean, of course, there's deficiencies. He's a young guy on the come up, but you put him around guys, and I've watched him on the AU circuit as well. You put him around guys that can score and do things. He can now distribute a little bit more, and I've seen because you haven't seen him in that type of environment. I can see how I can't see it at all. He's a straight point guard. He's a straight playmaker. And before we kind of round up this class, we want to look at a couple of not big names yet, but some bigs, some size. Javonte Brown. We actually haven't got a true evaluation on him yet, but we can't deny him at 6'10". We saw him in some preseason action with Thornley. He was on the bench, but I'm really looking forward to learn more about this kid at 6'10". It looks like an athlete. And then a guy we have seen is Charles Bediako, younger brother of Jaden Bediako. Very different than Jaden in terms of his agility and his speed. Not really a stocky guy, but a very mobile guy. And he's got a ton of upside at 6'8", 6'9". Very athletic, very ferocious around the rim. And again, similar to you and I, is complete opposites as brothers, it seems. Maybe not from a personality standpoint, but definitely on the floor. Yeah,
from a physical standpoint as well. Jaden, a lot more girth on him from a very young age. Had a more stronger base, whereas you look at Charles and he's more of a slinky, more of a wiry type of prospect. And it's been beneficial for him on the defensive end and from a rebounding standpoint. He rebounds in bunches. He's quick to get up for that second jump. Those fast twitch muscles are activated. He blocks and alters a lot of shots. So I'm not sure what kind of offensive threat he is yet, if at all. But he's definitely a guy that can, earn a position on a team as a specialist. Now, obviously, offensively, he's 2021 class. They're all going to grow. But what he is right now is a big-time rebounder and a big-time shot blocker.
That will wrap up the national player rankings. We'll be on the scene from coast to coast, tracking the top Canadian basketball prospects in the country, and be on the lookout for the next drop coming this spring.